Hello everyone and welcome to Tom's Tomb of Horror. I hope you're doing good and well. So it's time for a new film review on the channel and I'm talking about the film that everyone is talking about right now. This is Obsession. This was written, directed and edited by Curry Barker. And what I found interesting immediately about Curry Barker is that he has a background in comedy. He's not the only horror film director of modern times who has directed modern horror films with that kind of background. I think of Zach Cregger, for example, who has recently directed Weapons, which for me was an absolute masterpiece from last year, my favourite horror film of 2025. He also, of course, directed Barbarian. And, I can see the inspirations that Curry Barker has had with this film. I can sort of get a sort of Ari Aster vibes with the disturbing sequences and the intensity of the horror that is almost throughout the entire duration of this film. I think it's a really intense film, not for the faint-hearted. I would say if you're a seasoned horror fan, I mean, as somebody who has seen a number of horror films, I'm still feeling the impact of this film. I mean, it was only just over an hour ago that I finished seeing it, but this has left an impact on me. I still feeling a little bit of anxiety from it. I'm still feeling tingles in my fingers, maybe a faster heartbeat than normal. This was quite a strong, intense, at times pretty extreme horror film. And it was very impacting. I think very effective at what it was trying to do. Now, what I think is really interesting about this film. So first of all, let's just briefly cover what the film's about. This is about a young man who makes a wish using a one-wish willow object that the girl that he's been a long time friends with falls in love with him. In fact, he asks, who makes the wish that she loves him more than anything else in the whole world. Now, of course, this has really quite disastrous consequences as his girlfriend, takes a turn. This girl takes a turn for the worst and goes completely demonic, effectively, and you sort of see the situation spiral more and more out of control as the movie goes on. But I think for me, and Michael Johnson, I think both the performances of the leads were absolutely incredible. Michael Johnston as Bear and Izzy Navarrete as Nikki, both of them were fantastic. But I think for me, what I found really interesting was, yes, Nikki has she has the very obviously disturbing behaviors, the sort of demonic moments, the really scary, really creepy, kind of like outrageously violent moments in the film. But what I find as disturbing, if not more disturbing for me somewhat, is Bear is maybe the one who, he's the one that is kind of, I feel like, truly obsessed here. Not Nikki. Nikki is ultimately kind of the victim of a supernatural wish, and she is just displaying like she's possessed, basically, isn't she, throughout the film? Whereas Bear is kind of like, he's the one that knows what he's done, yet he's unable to deal with the consequences of what he's done, and he's unable to separate himself from his obsession with Nikki. And for me, that is kind of the real part of the horror in many respects here. In spite of the shocking and intense moments with all of Nikki's behaviours, it's kind of like there are two sides to this equation, but in a way, the horror is sort of ultimately, I feel like a lot of it is kind of with Bear and his decisions and, ultimately the path he chooses to follow or how he kind of doesn't handle the situation. I mean, in fairness, it is an absolutely insane situation to have, but his problem, I feel, is he just cannot separate himself from his obsession, and he's kind of see his downward spiral. For me, anyway, my interpretation, as much as you see Nikki's, throughout the film. I will say another highlight, and I'm talking about pros and cons. Another pro here for me is the Rock Burwell score, which I feel like is the hidden third star of this film. It's eerie, at times it's beautifully ambient when it needs to be, and then it's sort of also terrifying when it needs to be. The way he uses the synth score, I think, in this film is fantastic. I love the pitch shifts, the kind of eerie pitch shifts, and like also the sort of more romantic, if I can call it that, in a creepy way, but the sort of romantic moments in the music are also really, really strong here. And I just thought, I can see why this film is absolutely getting tons of hype. Like I say, truly great horror films, I think, leave an impact, and this one certainly has left an impact on me personally. I don't think it was perfect, actually. I will stress that. I think, I feel like I could see what was often coming with this film. Not that anything, it's like the execution of everything was fantastic here. Like it was delivered perfectly. It was really, really well done. Really well cooked, if you will. But I feel like it was the thing for me was I did find moments quite predictable. Like I could see them coming. And like I say, I'm not sure that the moments necessarily lost really any impact despite that. But for me, there was less in the way of surprises sometimes. I felt like I could see the next moment coming sometimes before, pretty far before it came, without giving too many spoilers away here. So, you know, I will say also the film is extremely intense. So if you're, this isn't for the faint-hearted. Like I may have said earlier in the review, it's a very, very intense horror film. It also probably has trigger points for those of you that may be triggered by certain dark themes that run, I think, throughout this film, actually, whether they're in the background or in the foreground and more obvious. There are certainly dark themes and I think trigger points in this movie. But I will say I think it's justified. The attention's warranted. The hype is warranted, which leaves me with no choice, but to say this is looking like odds-on favourite for my #1 horror film of 2026 right now. But there's still plenty of time, plenty of films to come out yet. But this is getting a 9 out of 10 score from me. What a film! Yeah, I recommend you see this if you enjoy. I think supernatural horror that's really, really intense, a little Larry Aster-like in that way, but also with, great sort of some good twists and turns, and yeah, certainly a lasting impact for me. So that's it from me on The Tomb, and until next time, do drop a like and a sub if you enjoyed this review. It supports the channel and everything I do here in The Tomb. Otherwise, it is bye for now.